I've been getting a few questions about calcium recently. So, well, I have made a number of videos covering a few aspects and all that. I will put up a couple of links. The one that actually, the genetics, I'll put over there, and the other one, the osteoporosis, I'll put it on the other side. Just if people are interested, let's just take a look, and I'll share my screen. So this is the NIH, National Institute of Health. I'm just the one that actually covers for the health professionals. So a bit of an intro. At birth, you mostly have about 26 to 30 grams of calcium, approximately. Bigger babies or smaller babies. Women in adulthood, about 1,200 grams, and men 1,400 grams in their body. Most of that is in bone. 99% is bone. It's only 1% that's in all the other intracellular fluids all over the place in that regard. So we're talking about the extracellular fluids. So what do we mean by that? Intracellular, inside the cell. Extracellular, inside the bloodstream, or the vascular tree, to be, which is another word that is used, especially by cardiologists. So when we're looking at, let me just beef that up a bit. It's a bit too small. At birth. And that is, that's when we're looking at about the 1%. It's about 14 grams or 14,000 milligrams. It's just slightly above that, 14,400. This is calcium metabolism. It's from the actual physiology books. So this is one of the chapters within the book. So when we're looking at when we're looking at the RDIs, they talk about like 1 gram when, as discussed, by maintenance of extracellular calcium balance requires the daily excretion of 200 milligrams. It can be higher depending on what your consumption is. So as you can see, absorption of calcium from food is about 45% at an intake of 200 milligrams. Oops. About 90. So if you're consuming that amount, if you're consuming above that, like intakes that are higher, like let's say somebody's eating a lot of cheese, as an example, point, you're looking at that 300, which is sort of the highest sort of threshold. You can eat plenty more of that, but it's not going to make much of a difference for the simple reason that even at the 300, you can see the body, what it's doing. So if you take in, let's say, 1,000, most of that's going to go into the feces, 800. And so you're going to take in about 300 at max. And from the solutes inside the bloodstream, you're going to pump out, you're going to knock out that amount. And so there may be, because remember, it's a dynamic system. So there may be a bit of an exchange between the bones as things are being filtered to maintain the balance, and then it'll put it back in, and and pretty much it'll excrete that amount. You can see the body maintains pretty much a good homeostasis. So when people get too concerned about, I'm worried about that. Unless you've got an electrolyte imbalance, you shouldn't have an issue. At a bare minimum, only about 14 to 15 milligrams a day or less than 1 or 2% of filtered calcium is excreted in the voided urine. The remaining 98, 99%, and it varies, it can be a bit more than 99+%, the reabsorption. It varies on a whole lot of factors in that regard, of what is the homeostasis. So it can fluctuate. This is sort of giving you the movement of calcium between different tissue types. So you can understand, intestines, most of it gets dumped in the feces. We don't absorb most of it. You can eat as much as you like cheese. You can, when you're going to absorb more and you're going to stick more into the bones, if you're deficient, like if you've been on a veganurized diet for very long, and then again, you need vitamin D, magnesium, boron, and the other fat-soluble vitamins in order to activate the right sequence of events. We're talking about enzymes here, to put that stuff there. And you need to have sufficient retinol and vitamin D to regulate the collagen-degrading enzymes or the enzymes involved in the turnover. Okay? But that's for another day, another video to get into that sort of shit. We're just looking now, and we're talking about shit here, aren't we? Quite a bit that ends up in the shit, in the shitter. That's just to give you a general idea. The body's always trying to maintain homeostasis. It's only going to take in and excrete less when it really needs to hold on to it for dear life, for either maintaining because it is a solute that plays a role also in the body with pH, but not that big because there's all the other ones. Bart's done that video, he's actually explained that, so I don't need to cover that. You guys can go and take a look at his research. Somebody who needs a link to his research paper, I do have one. Now, talking about, let's go back to here. So we're looking at those sort of levels. I usually say to people, because of that sort of, that variability of between 50. So if you're getting a bit of calcium food in on a carnivore diet, because you're at the lower end, compared to somebody who's on a pastoral diet who's at the higher end, they're going to excrete more. At the lower end, this is the bare minimum, 10 to 15, 14 to 15, that's probably a vegan will have those sort of levels, or somebody who's not getting a lot of calcium in their diet will have these very, very low excretion rates in that regard. And you can actually see, as I said, the 1% that is in the actual, in all the non-bone areas, the 1%, which is 14.4 grams for men. So they're looking at men, obviously, in this study. in the way they're actually doing that. So, which in milligrams is 14,400. So you can actually see most of it gets reabsorbed, very little. Now, you can get electrolyte disturbances. What is the critical one there? Well, it's taurine. Taurine really is the osmolyte that basically regulates this. I've done a whole lot of videos. There's a number of videos that cover taurine. There's a playlist, and I discuss it in there, so I'm not going to cover it here. I may do one in the future about all the minerals and show all the pathways that they go, which ones get excreted into the feces, like manganese, for instance, 90% through the feces. So there others more from the actual urine, others more from the feces, others don't get absorbed as much. There's a minimal absorption, like even calcium, as I showed you earlier here. It can be very low, even if you consume 1,000, 2,000 milligrams or 1 or 2 grams. It's not going to make much of a difference because the body doesn't need as much. And it will, and the less it gets, the less it'll excrete. And these are sort of the bare minimum of less than it's. I think it's. I saw it in one other study, 0.5% at absolute rock bottom in that regard. So you'll see a lot of studies have a bit of variability depending on who they've actually tested, what were they consuming. There's variability because of diets. There's going to be a lot of variability. It's a dynamic system. So just think about it. But what I'm trying to get across here is that it's not a big concern. I'll give you an example. Calcium, dairy, eggs, fish, meat, 100 grams, which is, pump it up, 100 grams, okay, which is 3.53 ounces. Obviously, all the cheeses are going to be up here. Dried whey powder is going to be right at the top, so 100 grams. It's going to give you a hell of a lot. And if we go beyond the cheeses, let's say somebody is dairy intolerant, I can't eat cheeses. Fair enough. Let's keep going. These are very high levels. Yep, keep going. So raw fresh water bass, 100 grams, 3.53 ounces, 80 milligrams. You're fine. So, because at the bare minimum is 50 or even less in severe cases. But let's say you're at the bottom, if you're looking at that sort of 1% percentile, as an example. So 1 divided by 100 times 1,440. So if you're looking at that amount, you can see 200, more or less 200 grams will cover it. Eggs, my fried eggs, 62. Scrambled eggs are a bit better, but I like fried eggs. So 62, 1, 2, 3 eggs, done, and all that. Raw eggs, a bit less, raw whiting. And if you go to the really low ends, like you're talking about really sort of low ends, like pork, 36. If you're taking in a very low amount of calcium and you don't have those calcium genes, which are a problem, that's when you sort of need to consume more because it really puts a block on how much you can absorb. So even there, 100 grams, nobody's going to eat 100 grams of pork. They're going to eat far more than that. Let's be honest. 3.5 grams, God, I'd be hungry as. Breast milk's got a bit there. Forget about the 2%, the RDIs. That's just nonsense. Some committee made up. You know, lamb roast and or even butter has quite a bit for that. Steak, 22. So if you, oops, I usually say if you aim for about, 70, you should be fine at a bare minimum. So divided by about 22, you're looking at about 318 grams. Divide that by 28 is about 11.2 ounces. So, and that's above the bare minimum of what you excrete, which is 50. If you're taking in calcium, you'll actually, at the lowest end, it'll be about 50 milligrams that will actually excrete. You'll get actually more. You'll get about all up 66, so 16 extra. These are the sort of levels you would get on a fasting mimicking diet, like a vegan diet or fasting. That's the sort of levels you would lose, which isn't a lot, it's very little on a daily basis if you took in calcium, very low amounts of calcium, or had really not taken any because you're fasting, as an example. Um, so it's a dynamic system, is what I'm trying to say. The body pretty much reabsorbs most of it. What it doesn't need, it just excretes it out of the feces and absorbs most of it. And that small little amount that you get every day, the small little amount that goes into the bones over years and years and years and days and days and days, it can amount to quite a lot. It's accumulative. It accumulates and all that. I mean, when you're a little child, your bones are very flexible and all that because they don't have a lot of calcification or mineralization, to be more precise. Yes, calcium is the big one, but there are other minerals as well. Boron is an important one as well. So, in that regard, so when it comes to, the reabsorption through the nephrons, it's pretty good. As they hold below, however, the relative contribution excessive renal tubule segments to calcium conservation, and we're talking about conservation here, and the regulation of calcium reabsorption varies along the nephron, obviously. And there's a lot of, as I said, because it's a dynamic system, it's different between some of the other stuff. But I've discussed that even in other videos about magnesium, potassium only 192. We get shitloads of potassium. Most of it doesn't even get absorbed, even if you eat or take a supplement. It just gets pushed out into the feces because you're only excreting 192 as an example. So there's this delusion that more is better from a lot of people out there. If you push beyond a certain threshold, it will get in. And that's what they do, and that can actually create a lot of derangements in the body. But you can't actually, even where they use excess potassium to kill people, it has to be intravenously given. You can't, orally give it to achieve the big dose in the bloodstream. So what I'm trying to say is that the body does everything it can to maintain homeostasis, and it only takes a small amount in every time. So a lot of people panic about, am I getting enough calcium? Am I getting enough of this and all that? I mean, even at these 100 grams of these 23, 24, whatever, if you're not taking a lot in, you may excrete very little, like 14 to 15 milligrams. At max, it usually, if you're taking some in, it'll usually be about 50. I usually say aim for 70 around. And the reason why I say that is to give you a bit of a buffer between the 90 and the 50. So that's why I use the 70 as sort of a cutoff, like a blunt instrument. And because, that's 100 grams, it's pretty much 70 is about for fried egg. 62 is for one fried egg. For 70, it's 1.13 eggs. So just a bit over one egg that men need. Women need about 60. So you're looking at one egg. One egg will cover you because it's got 62 milligrams. In a fried egg, we're talking about. Obviously, if it's scrambled, there's more. If it's raw, there's less because it's a bit more bound. So, but I will provide this link and people can go and take a look. But they just need to get into their head that when we eat, even if we just eat meat, as I showed you, down to the 20 odd, eat 300 grams of meat, you're going to get all you need. 350 for men, all they need. And there we're talking about, even at 350 mark, about 12 and a third of an ounce, So if you're having pound or close to half a kilo, you're going to get, even on a sort of a lion's diet, you'll get enough. All you may do is you may excrete less as well. Now, the proviso is you need that insulin bump. That's why now you understand why Bart K ums and uffs keeps telling you guys to eat one big meal a day. He does that deliberately so you can actually push up your insulin levels through that extra protein so you can have that effect. The other thing that I always also say, which is my sort of argument, is that if you eat the extra protein as well, why I argue about protein, and we're more in agreement now with Bart because he's sort of shifted. Jonathan's on the same page as me. Then you'll get more. You'll be able to synthesize more taurine. Hopefully, you've got a good working pancreas. Hopefully, you'll be able to synthesize more taurine, and taurine as an osmolyte will regulate all the ions, including calcium. It is a natural calcium channel blocker as well, so lower blood pressure, but it also means in those taut receptors in the nephrons, where you've got the transporters, as long as there's sufficient taurine in the system, the regulation of the kidneys will be really good, and electrolyte homeostasis will be maintained. This is why when low protein, keto style, veganurized or vegetarian type things create a whole lot of electrolyte issues because people are not eating enough protein. One, to get the insulogenic effect, and 2, to get sufficient taurine in order to regulate the ions. That's their failure. You see tribal people, they love eating meat. They love hunting it. They love grabbing a lot larger pieces of it. They don't sit there measuring it. They stuff themselves in that one meal. You know, they enjoy themselves because they're not sure where they're going to get the other meal. And that makes the big difference because they will get the nutrients that will provide the stuff that is required for the regulation. They also won't be guzzling down a whole lot of water, which will unbalance that whole system as well. You only drink to thirst, and mostly you should be hydrating with fat, like tribal people do. You don't see them carrying water around. It's only modern people, because you do produce more metabolic water with fat, and that is what hydrates you in the end. And so as long as you've got then the taurine and the protein in to provide the material that's needed for all these things to work properly, to regulate properly, as they say in Aussie land, Bob's your uncle. It means, you know, duh type thing. Anyway, I will leave you with those thoughts. I hope that sort of cleared up a bit of what's involved in calcium homeostasis and why people on a carnivore diet should not be concerned too much about calcium. They get more than enough. The only people that should be is that 24% of people who have got those pastoral genes. Those are the people that should be concerned, like me. Yeah, sucks to be me. Yeah, I've heard that. So pretty much that is it. I hope that was informative for you. And it's 11:20, and I better get to bed. Anyway, see you guys.